The summer sun baked the wide stretch of empty fields on the outskirts of Brookwood, a town that had been growing faster than anyone expected. The grass had grown high, swaying like waves, untouched by plow or tractor in decades. It was land that most of the townsfolk passed every day without giving a second thought, though it had been sitting there quietly carrying its own story. The HOA president, Cynthia Rowe, however, saw something more than grass and trees. She saw opportunity. To her, it wasn't just land, it was her chance to cement her name in the community's history, to create a new development that would elevate her status and, of course, her bank account. At every HOA meeting, she spoke with the kind of polished enthusiasm that drowned out concerns. She painted a picture of tree-lined streets, a community park, and 120 beautiful, modern homes. Families would fill them, children would ride bicycles down the cul-de-sacs, and property values would soar. The more she talked, the more the board believed her. But Cynthia had one fatal flaw: she never truly checked the foundation of her grand plan. She assumed that because no one had built on that stretch of land, it was unclaimed or easily obtainable. A few sketchy documents and some creative zoning maneuvers later, she pushed the project forward with bulldozers roaring to life. When construction began, the air filled with the scent of freshly turned soil, and the once quiet fields became a hub of activity. Cement trucks lined up, workers hammered frames into place, and trucks carried in stacks of lumber. The people of Brookwood admired the speed of it all. What had once been overlooked countryside was transforming into a bustling neighborhood in just months. And standing on the edge of it all, hands tucked into his pockets, was Marcus Reed. Marcus wasn't the kind of man who drew attention to himself. At 46 years old, he carried himself with a calm that some mistook for indifference. But beneath that quiet exterior was a sharp mind and an even sharper memory. That land wasn't forgotten or abandoned, it was his. His grandfather, Samuel Reed, had bought it in 1956, at a time when landownership for a black man in that part of the state was no easy feat. Samuel had worked the night shift at a textile mill and took odd jobs during the day, saving every dollar until he had enough to secure those acres. Owning land was his way of ensuring his family always had a place in a world that often tried to deny them one. Marcus had grown up hearing the story of that purchase, sitting at his grandfather's knee as the old man held the deed like it was sacred scripture. Every year, Marcus's father continued the tradition of paying the property taxes, carefully filing away each receipt in a weathered folder. When his father passed, Marcus inherited the folder, the deed, and the responsibility of keeping the land in the family. So when he saw heavy machinery carving up his fields, he didn't panic. He didn't storm onto the site yelling. He didn't even call the police. Instead, he stood at a distance, watching, silent, letting them build. The first house went up in a matter of weeks, then another, then another. He saw families move in, children waving joyfully as moving trucks unloaded furniture. He saw Cynthia Rowe touring reporters through model homes, flashing her bright smile and speaking proudly about her community. But Marcus knew something no one else did. Every brick, every nail, every paved road was being built on his foundation, literally. He understood the law, and he understood patience. If he acted too soon, they'd dismiss him, bury him in legal red tape, or find a way to twist the situation in their favor. But if he waited until the last house was sold and the project fully completed, then his leverage would be undeniable. The townspeople, unaware of the storm brewing, applauded the new development. It was a symbol of progress, of Brookwood stepping into a brighter, wealthier future. Real estate agents bragged about how quickly the houses sold, how property values in surrounding neighborhoods were already climbing. Cynthia basked in the praise, her name whispered with admiration at community events. She was no longer just an HOA president, she was the woman who had transformed Brookwood. Marcus, meanwhile, kept his distance, but each evening he would drive past the subdivision slowly, headlights sweeping across the rows of new homes. He noticed how carefully manicured the lawns were, how the lights inside glowed warmly as families settled into their routines. None of them had any idea that the ground beneath their feet was not legally theirs. They were living in houses that, by the simple force of law, already belonged to him. The irony was sharp. For years, people had whispered about why the land was never developed. Some thought Marcus was too lazy to do anything with it. Others assumed it had been abandoned. A few even muttered that he couldn't possibly afford to hold onto it. Cynthia herself had echoed those sentiments when she pushed her plan forward, brushing aside anyone who questioned her about the deed. "No one's claimed that land in years," she had said dismissively. "It's better put to use for the community." She never thought to check the county records thoroughly, never thought a man like Marcus could hold onto property for generations without cashing in. The truth was, Marcus didn't need to build or sell. That land wasn't just acreage, it was history. It was dignity. It was the tangible proof of his grandfather's perseverance through a time of deep inequality. And if Cynthia thought she could simply erase that with construction permits and smiling brochures, she was in for a lesson. As the final touches went into place, the community center painted, the playground installed, the last home purchased, Marcus knew the moment had arrived. He didn't need to raise his voice. He didn't need to knock on doors or confront families. All he needed was the worn folder that had been passed down from his grandfather to his father, and now to him. Inside was the deed, signed and notarized in 1956, the tax receipts for every year since, and the unbroken line of ownership that no court in the state could ignore. The trap was set, not with malice, but with quiet certainty. The HOA thought they had taken something forgotten, but what they had really done was invest millions into improving land they never owned. And soon, they would realize every improvement they made, every home they sold, had only made Marcus Reed's property more valuable than ever. And Marcus, calm, deliberate, and patient, was ready to step forward and claim what was rightfully his. The new subdivision was supposed to be the crown jewel of the HOA president's career. Pamphlets showed happy families, freshly paved streets, and a shining community center. Behind the scenes, she pushed the project through zoning meetings, silenced dissent, and even ignored a few red flags about the land deed. What nobody realized was that the 40-acre property didn't actually belong to the HOA at all. It belonged to a quiet man named Marcus Reed, an African-American whose grandfather had purchased the land in the 1950s, leaving behind a perfectly clear deed that had never once been sold, transferred, or lost. For years Marcus paid the taxes on it, keeping it in the family name. He never built on it, never sold, and never leased it. When Marcus saw construction equipment rolling in, he didn't rush out waving papers. He let them build. He let them pave roads, pour concrete, and raise rooftops. He watched as the HOA president boasted about her visionary community. Families signed 30-year mortgages, schools welcomed new students, and the property value soared. Then, when the last home was sold and the HOA celebrated its grand ribbon cutting, Marcus made his move. He walked into the county records office with a single folder, his grandfather's deed, tax receipts spanning decades, and a notarized affidavit of continuous ownership. The clerk checked the files, looked at the signatures, and froze. The subdivision had been built on land the HOA never legally owned. Marcus didn't shout, didn't gloat. He filed a quiet title action in court. Within weeks, notices went out to 120 homeowners. They didn't actually own the land under their feet. Panic spread like wildfire. Mortgages collapsed, insurance companies refused coverage, and the HOA president faced lawsuits from every direction. The true sting came when Marcus's attorney revealed the trap. By knowingly ignoring the land's title chain, the HOA had opened itself up to not just forfeiture, but damages. Every home, every road, every brick, all improvements made on Marcus's land, legally belonged to him. If he wanted, he could evict everyone and sell the homes himself. The HOA begged for a settlement. Homeowners demanded answers. The president who once strutted through board meetings now hid from reporters. In Marcus, he finally spoke. "My grandfather bought this land when black men weren't even allowed to live in most neighborhoods around here. He worked 2 jobs to pay it off. You thought you could just take it because you had money and power. But this land is ours, and it always will be." The court sided with Marcus, leaving the HOA to untangle the disaster it had created. What was meant to be a legacy turned into ruin, and a sharp reminder that history has a long memory, and sometimes justice comes with ironclad paperwork.